What's good, my dear language learning masters? Welcome to a new episode of the Language Input Podcast, in which my main goal, as usual, is to help you understand that we can all learn any language while enjoying the process every step of the way. That's right. I'm totally convinced. I won't get tired of repeating it because I believe it's true, and I really want to help you understand that you too, whether you think you're not talented for languages, whether you think you're too old to learn a language, that's actually not true, like I said, and I really want to help you understand that. Because knowing that really changed my life when it comes to language learning, for the better, of course, and I really want to help as many people as possible realize that as well. So, with that being said, let's get into today's episode. And today I want to talk about reading, and more specifically about how to go about reading. Okay, what type of books to use in specific levels, or how to go about reading in terms of, do I need to look up words? Do I need to, read the entire word without looking up any words? Or, in general, how to go about it, all right? And first of all, and before getting into the specific books that I personally use to keep working on my languages, I want to remind you that the key to the entire process, once again, is comprehensible input, right? So with that in mind, it's all about understanding what you're reading, right? So whatever your level is, if you understand the book or the story, whatever it is, if you understand what's going on, if you understand the story, the process is working. So, whatever your level, just choose a specific type of book that you think you could understand, all right? And if you do, that's great. And go ahead, read the entire book, read similar books, and keep doing it, because it's such an unbelievable resource when it comes to language acquisition, right? And if you don't understand it yet, once again, there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't mean that the process is not working. It doesn't mean that you're not talented for languages, that you're too old to learn a language and stuff like that. No. It just means you didn't get to that point yet. And all you need to do is try to find something easier, and you'll get to the point later on. Okay? I think I've talked about this many times, but I think it's important to repeat it again and again, because it's just the truth, right? And I believe it's going to help so many people, right? And yeah, so once again, that's the most important thing. So I'm going to talk about different types of book that I personally use depending on my level, but it all comes down to, again, telling yourself the truth, whether you can understand a specific book or not, and take it from there, like I said, right? And well, first of all, if you start in a language from scratch, it's probably gonna be hard to find any type of written resource that you can understand on your own, right? So even if it's a related language, like, I don't know, as a native Spanish speaker, in my case, Italian or Portuguese, for example, even in that case, if you're starting from scratch, you're probably not gonna be able to find any comprehensible resources, in comprehensible written resources, right? Even the most simple of them. So in that case, if you're starting from scratch, you're first gonna get exposed to the language in a written form. In your, whether you're attending classes or watching YouTube videos of language teachers who create stories or similar ideas to help you get started with the language. So they're probably they're gonna start writing down some words to help you understand the message, and that's gonna be your first contact with the written form, right? So if you're starting from scratch, I wouldn't try to find any type of written resource to read on your own yet, because, like I said, you're just not gonna find anything that you can understand, right? But later on, and when you're still a beginner, but you're not starting from scratch, your ability to understand is getting better and better. What I usually go with is either cartoons. I mean, not cartoons, excuse me, like comic books or children's stories, similar ideas. And again, in the end, it all comes down to telling yourself the truth on whether you can understand it or not, right? So I'm giving you ideas, but it's about you trying them out and seeing if it works, right? But I find that children's stories and cartoons are particularly useful at this point because obviously they're meant for children in general, right? So it's always going to be easier to understand what they're talking about, right? And when it comes to the comic books, you're going to have a lot of images as well to help you understand what's going on in the story, right? And so yeah, I really think that they can be extremely useful if you've already gotten to that point in which you can understand what's going on, right? So as a beginner, I would go with those two, especially like children's stories and comic books. And I'm sure when it comes to children's stories, a lot of them are just like ancient stories or like all stories you can find online, like with no copyright, so you can actually read them for free legally, right? And and when it comes to comic books, you're probably gonna be able to find some comic books on your local library. It depends on the language, of course, but if it's a popular language, I'm sure you're gonna be able to find some comic books. But in general, those are the two go-to resources when you're a beginner, right? But again, if you have different ideas that you think could work, again, just give them a try. If you think you could be able to understand them, and if you can, great. And if you can't, just try to find something easier and get there later on again to see if you can understand them, right? And then as we progress and as our ability to understand keeps getting better and better, I believe young adult books are like a pretty good next step when it comes to reading, because they're much more complex than children's books or comic books, but at the same time they're still not as complicated as just quote unquote normal books, right? Because they're still meant for young adults or adolescents, right? So it's always going to be easier to understand the story than that of a book for adults, right? So I'd go with Harry Potter type of books, yeah. And once again, give them a try, and if you can understand what they're talking about, awesome. If not, just try to find something easier, all right? And whether we're talking about this level or the previous one, you might also find different channels on YouTube in which teachers use storytelling to teach the language, and sometimes they actually use reading stories as well, so you can get both oral input and written input. So that's probably great. And I myself, when it comes to Spanish, I'm trying to think of ideas to provide both of them, like oral input and written. So if Spanish is the language you're looking to learn, you can check out my channel, because I keep uploading videos in which I'm trying to use written. I'm trying to write things down as much as possible as well, because I think it's tremendously helpful when it comes to acquiring the language. But whatever your language, I'm sure you're probably going to be able to find couple of YouTube channels that are going to help you in that regard. Okay. And then from young adults, it's as you keep getting better and better, up to an advanced level, pretty much after that, you're going to be able to understand most books, right? I mean, unless we're talking about really complex and complicated, I don't know, philosophy books, for example. But it's actually not about the language itself, but the topics they talk about, right? So we're talking about books that you may have a hard time understanding in your own native language, right? So it wouldn't make any sense if it was something you wouldn't consider in your own native language, right? But the awesome part about this level is you already got to a point in which you can understand pretty much any type of book, so you can pick out the books about the topics that you're most interested in, right? So at this point it's really going to make a difference, because like children's stories and comic books are great, but in general we adults don't want to be reading children's stories for 5 years, right? So I look at them more as a sort of transition resource that's going to give me access to more complex and interesting resources, books later on down the road, right? So I actually don't mind it, and it's always pleasant to realize that you can understand books, even if children's stories, in a new language, right? So I actually, like, as I've talked about with cartoons many times, you actually end up enjoying them because of that feeling, like I said, of being able to understand a new language, which is unbelievable, right? So, but again, it's okay at the beginning, right? But you wouldn't want to be reading those types of books for 5 years, right? But you don't have to, of course, so no worries in that regard. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about today in today's episode, because I get asked a lot. I get asked a lot about reading, like how to go about reading. Like, should I? Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Like whatever the level, whatever the type of book you're reading, the way I go about it is the following. Like, say I'm reading. Let's use a young adult book as an example. I'm reading a young adult book in French, for example, right? So, I personally don't like to look up words while I'm reading, because it sort of messes with my flow, and it's not as pleasant when you have to do that all the time, right? So I normally would just look up 2-3 words in an entire book, and only if I really feel like understanding that word is key to understanding what's going on in the story, to understanding the book, the plot, what the character is talking about, what's going on in the story in general, right? But on average, we're talking about 2, 3, 4 words in an entire book, right? So that's my recommendation, okay? Because I believe that if you have to be looking at words all the time, that means that specific book is probably beyond your comprehension ability at that point, right? And you just should try to find something easier, and you'll get there later on, like I'm always saying, right? But yeah, I think it's important to understand that a lot of times there's always going to be words that we don't understand. It even happens in our native language, right? And there's nothing wrong with it. And most times, those words don't really make a difference when it comes to understanding the story, right? So you don't need to be looking at words all the time if you feel like they're not that important to understanding the story, right? And if you do have to do it in order to understand what's going on, like I said before, you're probably trying to access a book that's beyond your means at that point, right? So that's the way I go about it. Just a few really 2, 3, 4 words in an entire book, and only when I feel like I really need to understand that word to go on with the story, right? So yeah, that's it for today, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it helped you out. And as usual, thanks so much for coming this far in this episode. Thanks so much for listening to the entire episode. And yeah, any question, any suggestion, any opinion on today's topic you have, feel free to let me know. Feel free to comment down below if you're listening to this on YouTube or any other platform where you can leave your messages. And yeah, that's it for today, everyone. And hope you're having a great time wherever you are. And thank you once again. Bye bye. Ciao.